Well, hello and welcome to Station Pier in Port Melbourne. I'm Alex Kalinauckas from Autosport, and with me are Jonathan Noble and Andrew Van Leeuwen from Motorsport.com. We're at a special event organised by Red Bull Racing. The team are here in Melbourne ahead of the Australian Grand Prix. Alexander Albon and Max Verstappen have been addressing the media, having some fun on Eskies, is it, Andrew, that they've been racing today?
Esky, yep, that's what we call it over here in Australia. A cooler, I think you call it in your part of the world. Was that right?
Something like that. They look like electronic beer boxes, essentially. No, not electronic, motorised beer boxes that they were herring around on. No broken legs so far, and the drivers seem all right though.
No, I think they all got away. There was some stacks in the media race at the end there. There seemed to be a few stacks, but we won't dump anybody in it, throw them under the bus, and say who it was. But yeah, a couple of blokes ended up upside down, I think.
Absolutely, yeah, very dramatic. Now, obviously, there's hot news topics being asked of the drivers today, and John will start with what they made of the current coronavirus situation, which is developing around the world. Everybody's here all right in the Melbourne at the moment, and things are going ahead as planned as we record. But yeah, what did the drivers make of what's going on? And there's certain measures already we can see just from being at this event being put in place.
Well, exactly. We heard ahead of the weekend that it's not going to be a normal weekend. Obviously, all the headlines about coronavirus, and we arrived at Red Bull today and told that there is now an exclusion zone around the drivers. There's been talk of it over the weekend, a 2-metre zone. Keep away from the drivers, try and minimise the potential for spread. There was a case they found in a restaurant near the track last night. So I think the F1 paddock's a bit on edge really about where it's going. It's obviously a fast developing situation. I'm sure it's going to be the main talking point throughout the weekend.
Absolutely, and Alex Albon spoke of it being a little bit of a different atmosphere. He wasn't making any judgment or anything like that, but everyone's just aware of what's going on, and that's going to be at the forefront of everybody's minds. But he also spoke of the need to maintain a balance between what the teams and drivers need to do to keep themselves safe, but also give something to the fans. So do you think that sort of exclusion zone approach will be put in place for the rest of the weekend?
I'd have thought so. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they do regarding autograph sessions, regarding drivers taking selfies. There's a lot of points over a Grand Prix weekend where the fans get very close to drivers. I'm not sure that'll be able to continue until we go. I think the teams are obviously going to be looking at it, and I'm sure there'll be some information from the F1 chiefs and FIA about how we proceed. But I think it's not going to be a normal, straightforward weekend for anybody.
No, absolutely. Now, Andrew, obviously you live here in Melbourne, just not far down there across the beach. Yes. But what is the situation like in the city at the moment? Obviously, we've arrived from Europe, where it's rolling news constantly. It's developing things. Italy yesterday completely locked down. What does Australia make of Formula One arriving with a potential pandemic on the horizon?
It's a really kind of odd atmosphere at the moment because there's sort of this disconnect between Australia is pressing on with its big events. It's bucking the trend of the rest of the world and saying, no, we're going to do this. They had 90,000 people, or nearly 90,000 at the MCG for the women's cricket final the other night. But if you went to a supermarket and tried to buy toilet paper, you can't because everybody's petrified about going into lockdown. So it kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense at the moment. And I guess that's kind of representative of the situation as a whole around the world. We don't really know what's happening, and that's why it's such a weird atmosphere this weekend, because how close are people going to be getting? The Melbourne Mile, one of the most famous parts of Albert Park, with the drivers walking in. I mean, surely they just can't go ahead with things like that, And these are all the sort of questions. And those Red Bull guys were getting questions fired at them before about it, but they don't know, and we don't know. And I think everyone's sort of trying to work out where things are at and what they should be doing, and whether they should be panicking or panicking less or panicking more. It really is a different thing. My understanding is that, for example, supercars teams, I don't think they're going to go ahead with signing sessions, and I don't think there'll be any fines if teams aren't comfortable with putting drivers into situations with the public and that sort of stuff that they would normally get at a normal round if you didn't show up for a signing session. So we're going to see that sort of stuff. I just can't see there being any sort of contact between drivers and the general public.
Cool. So so as we record, everything is going ahead as planned. The Australian Grand Prix Corporation and their bosses there have been saying there's no way it will be run behind closed doors and shut off to the fans. But what is the current messaging coming out from the Australian Grand Prix organiser?
It's been business as usual. That's been the line throughout this whole thing. Obviously, the biggest hurdle was actually last week, and it was what was going to happen with Italy and whether there was going to be the actual travel ban that the Australian government had already put in place for South Korea, for Iran, and for mainland China. They didn't do that, and that was kind of the green light that this thing's going to go ahead. So, as John mentioned, there was a case in Albert Park in a restaurant last night. It's there. It's an ongoing thing, and even I wouldn't be surprised if things change very quickly after this weekend.
Yeah, it will be.
I think that's where we could see things change. And remember, this is one of the big sporting events in Melbourne, but it's not the only one. This is the sporting capital of this country. The Australian Football League kicks off next weekend. So there's a lot of very interesting decisions to be made, not just regarding this event, but events in general, because this city is all about events. It thrives on it. It lives on it. So, if they start losing that, it's going to have a big impact on Melbourne.
Yeah, and it's certainly worth keeping an eye on post weekend to see what happens as F1 leaves town. Now, there was, of course, this being Formula One, questions back to the politics and the internal things going on in the paddock, and particularly the Ferrari FIA engine settlement that came up towards the end of winter testing. Now, John, Max Verstappen was asked about that. He was pretty outspoken last year, accusing at one point the word cheats or cheater was used with in regards to Ferrari's engine. What did he make of things this morning?
Well, obviously not wanting to say too much. Obviously it's a very delicate political situation. I think the deadline, the teams obviously issued the statement last week, the joint statement criticising the FIA and wanting answers about what's happening. They also sent a follow-up letter to the FIA of a long series of questions they want to ask about transparency, decisions, why certain things have happened. The deadline for that, I understand, runs out this evening, kind of Wednesday night. So I think as we go into the weekend, I think things could escalate a lot. And I think Max was just portraying what the teams want. They want a level playing field. They want to know that, if a team, there were suspicions about a team, why was an agreement made? Why can't the FIA rule that engine was legal or wasn't legal? Because it's got to be one or the other. There shouldn't be grey areas in issues like this. So I think they want some clarity, and we'll see where it goes on. And you've got then more politics about DAS and, is a team going to protest it and question it? Is a team going to protest and question the Racing Point Mercedes copy? There's a lot of issues bubbling away in the background.
Absolutely, and but one issue that no one can do anything about at all is the weather, which potentially could impact this weekend. Andrew, what is Melbourne expecting? It's famous for having lots of seasons all the time and every day. But what do you think could happen so far this weekend?
It's Melbourne. The weather's going to do something at some point. I can assure you that. It just, if you look at today, it's a beautiful day, 28 degrees here, sunny. I think tomorrow's going to be fairly similar. Friday is the only day they're forecasting rain at the moment, and then Saturday it's going to be 18 degrees. So even Friday it's going to be 28, and then it's going to be 18, which is classic Melbourne. Just drop 10 degrees overnight. And that's as much as you can trust the forecast as well, because as you mentioned, 4 seasons in one day, that's what this place is famous for. So at some point we will get some rain, but at the moment we can stand here and, for you guys in particular, just enjoy some sunshine, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We'll be bringing you more videos from the Australian Grand Prix as the event develops over the coming days. But do check out, obviously our videos on YouTube and all our stories on autosport.com and motorsport.com. Subscribe to our social media channels and let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks very much.